You trust me, don't you, my love? My husband, Julian, whispered softly, just as his parents, Arthur and Eleanor Croft, slid a thick contract across the table, demanding everything I owned. I smiled, oddly calm, and met his gaze. Then you won't mind what I've prepared. Just then, the dining room door opened and my lawyer walked in. I met Julian 6 years ago in San Francisco. Back then, I, Amelia Hayes, was in my late 20s, fully immersed in my career. Real estate was my domain. I flipped houses, made smart investments, and built a comfortable, stable, and secure life for myself. Nothing flashy, but it was the fruit of years of relentless work, from appraising properties and negotiating contracts to overseeing every renovation detail. Every house I transformed was a piece of me, a testament to my independence and capability. Julian, on the other hand, gave me the impression that he came from old money. At least that's what I believed. He had the calm demeanor, self-assurance, and refined taste of someone accustomed to an opulent life. He never really talked about money, but he always wore the most expensive suits, showed off the latest gadgets, and indulged in every luxury. His parents, Arthur and Eleanor, were the same. They exuded the air of the old elite, as if they were inherently nobler than everyone else. Their Hamptons estate was vast, filled with antique furniture and imposing ancestral portraits, oozing wealth from every corner. But I wasn't some wide-eyed ingenue impressed by opulence. I had met many wealthy people before, even worked with them regularly. Yet something about Julian's family always unsettled me. Arthur and Eleanor would make offhand remarks like, "You're so lucky to be joining our family," or, "A woman like you must be thrilled with the stability we can provide." I should have wondered why they assumed I craved stability so desperately, as if I were in dire need of a financial refuge. Julian, too, occasionally set off alarm bells. He'd borrow money from me and then conveniently forget to repay it. Once, he suggested I put a property he wanted to buy in my name, citing better for tax reasons. I shut that down immediately. He also frequently forgot to pay expensive restaurant bills, leaving me to pick up the tab, only to apologize later with flowery words. Still, I dismissed these red flags. I convinced myself they weren't big deals, just minor habits of a wealthy, spoiled man. I deceived myself until that fateful night when they began to execute their plan. Julian and I had been married for 2 years when his parents invited us to dinner at their estate. This was nothing unusual. They loved lavish family gatherings with expensive wine and endless discussions about legacy and tradition. But that night, the atmosphere was different. From the moment we sat down, a strange tension hung in the air. Julian was unusually animated, his eyes sparkling with an odd intensity. His mother, Eleanor, beamed with anticipation, and his father, Arthur, typically stoic, wore a terrifyingly smug expression. A sense of unease crept through me, like a faint alarm bell. Mid-meal, Arthur cleared his throat and placed a thick stack of papers before me like a prized offering. "We've been thinking about the future," Eleanor said in a warm, almost maternal tone. "About what's best for our family." I glanced at Julian, who was intently watching my reaction. "We need to ensure stability," Arthur added, pushing a pen towards me. "This contract allows us to merge our resources, forming a unified financial entity working in harmony." I picked up the first page and skimmed it. My stomach clenched. They wanted me to literally transfer everything, my savings, investments, real estate properties, and even my personal bank accounts, into a family trust entirely under their control. Nausea churned in my throat. "It's just a formality, my love," Julian said smoothly, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. He winked at me, a confident smile on his face. "You trust me, don't you?" Something inside me snapped. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath to compose myself, and smiled. Not just with my lips, but with my eyes. "Then, you and your parents will love what's in my safety deposit box." Silence descended upon the room. Julian's smile faltered, his eyes filling with confusion. Eleanor's knuckles whitened around her wine glass. Arthur's jaw clenched. Their collective arrogance began to crumble. They expected me to be shocked or even flattered. They hadn't expected me to dare to defy them. "What's in the safety deposit box?" Julian asked, his voice strained. "Oh, just a few papers," I said nonchalantly, shrugging. "Certain documents, something I prepared before we got married, to protect myself." The stillness in the room became thick, heavy, and then, as if on cue, the butler entered. "Madam," he said, "your attorney has arrived." I wish I could have captured their expressions. Julian was ashen, as if he'd seen a ghost. Eleanor had the look of someone forced to swallow a lemon, and Arthur, he just stared at me, clutching the contract. A moment later, Evelyn Reed, my lawyer, walked in. "Good evening," she greeted, setting her briefcase on the table. "I understand there's a contract my client needs to sign." Eleanor was the first to regain her composure. "This is a private family matter," she bristled. "No need for a lawyer here." Evelyn ignored her, flipping through the contract pages, scanning sections. Then she chuckled softly. "Well," she said, shaking her head, "this is quite the blatant financial manipulation." Julian fumbled. "It's not that," he began, but Evelyn cut him off. "Actually, it is," she said definitively, looking at me. "If my client signs this, they will have complete control over her assets. They can drain bank accounts, sell properties, and she will have no power to stop it." Eleanor's face flushed. "This is about trust," she argued, her voice falsely sweet. "Yes," Evelyn retorted bluntly, "which would explain why the contract explicitly states they have full withdrawal rights, property sale rights, and all major financial decision-making power, while my client cannot access her funds without their permission." She turned to me, smiling. "Amelia, good thing you have a lawyer who reads the fine print." Julian abruptly stood up. "Why are you doing this?" he hissed, looking me dead in the eye. "Why am you doing this?" I repeated, my voice calm but disbelieving. "You just tried to steal everything from me." Eleanor's voice became falsely sweet again. "Darling, this is just a misunderstanding." "No," I said coldly, "it's not." I stood up, exhaling slowly. "I'm done here." As I moved to leave, Julian clamped his hand around my wrist, hard enough to convey a threat. His smirk was gone, replaced by an icy glare. "Don't do this," he hissed under his breath. "You really don't want to make enemies of this family." "Enemies?" I repeated, yanking my hand free. I looked him straight in the eye. "That's exactly what you've turned me into." Eleanor abruptly changed tactics. She let out a shaky laugh and clutched her chest, dramatic as a soap opera star. "Darling, you're overreacting. This is just a big mix-up." I remained silent. She persisted. "We just want to keep you safe. The world can be so harsh. Money can slip through your fingers in an instant, and we want to protect you. Protect all of us." "Safe?" I asked. "Safe from what? From myself?" Evelyn crossed her arms. "If that were true, why did you structure the trust so my client has no control over her own money?" Arthur let out a loud sigh, as if exasperated, staring at his wife, then at Julian. "This has become unnecessary. Let's act like adults." I almost laughed. "Like adults?" I repeated. "You mean the kind of adults who try to defraud their own family members?" His face darkened, but I refused to be intimidated. Their desperation was as clear as day. They were convinced I'd be too shocked and emotional to think logically. They had terribly underestimated me. That's when Eleanor dropped her next bombshell. "I suppose," she began with an exasperated sigh, "this means you don't care about the inheritance either." My head snapped towards her. "Inheritance?" Julian shot his mother a warning look, but she continued. "Oh," she said airily, "did Julian forget to mention Grandpa's upstate New York estate? The family's real fortune." I felt Evelyn's eyes flick to mine. We both realized the same thing. Their scheme wasn't just about my finances. "The estate is in probate," Eleanor continued, "and we're about to gain full control. But if you're going to be difficult—" She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. She was toying with me, dangling this carrot, hoping I'd leap at the promise of more wealth. But all I saw was a disturbing pattern, a family adept at taking what wasn't theirs. And Julian? He knew all along but hadn't said a word to me. I turned to him. "Did you have anything to say?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I was just waiting for the right moment, for things to align better." Better for whom? He said nothing because we both knew the truth. He would never have told me if things hadn't been forced into the open. We left that night without a word of farewell. In the car, Evelyn rubbed her temples, sighing. "You realize what's happening, right?" "Yes," I murmured. "They're not just after my money." "Exactly." She tapped her finger on the side of her briefcase. "If that upstate New York estate is as big as they claim, they'll do anything to keep control." I stared out the window, the wheels in my mind spinning. What are the odds Julian is in debt? Evelyn shot me a knowing look. "You believe he's hiding something?" "I'm sure of it." In hindsight, everything made sense. The flashy lifestyle, the designer clothes, how he bragged about money but rarely paid bills himself. If he was drowning in debt, then the trust scheme wasn't just about controlling me. It was his last push. The next morning, I did what I should have done long ago. I hired a private investigator. I wanted details on everything: his credit, his debts, his past dealings, everything. And what came back was worse than I'd imagined. Julian was drowning in debt, maxed out credit cards, personal loans, and even a business loan he'd secretly taken out in my name. Fury surged, and I confronted him that very evening. "How long have you been stealing from me?" Julian blinked. "What are you talking about?" I threw the evidence in his face. "You took out a loan in my name. You're drowning in debt. You lied to me, and you expected me to sign over everything so you could fix your own problems?" This time he didn't bother to deny it. Instead, he did something worse. He laughed, a bitter, empty laugh. "You're always so careful," he sneered. "I thought you'd eventually understand the bigger picture, that we needed to be realistic about our future. But you just don't get it, do you?" My heart pounded. "So, you planned this all along?" He looked at me, his face unreadable. "You have no idea what you've started." I took a step back, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Are you threatening me?" He didn't answer. He just gave me a cold stare, grabbed his jacket, and slammed the door as he left. I stood there, fists clenched, more angry than scared. If he thought it was over, he was dead wrong. After he left, I barely slept. The pieces in my head clicked into place. Every suspicious action, every lie, every subtle manipulation was designed to pave the way for their grand scam. By morning, my phone buzzed and I answered, hearing Evelyn on the other end. "You need to come to my office immediately," she said, her voice tight. I didn't waste time asking why. When I arrived, she was waiting with a file on her desk. "You're not going to like this," she warned, pushing it towards me. I opened it and my stomach clenched. There was another woman. Actually, two, Isabel and Sophia. "Julian has been lying about more than money," Evelyn said softly. She turned to two photos of these women, both stunning and both younger than me. "Isabel was with him 2 years ago," Evelyn explained. "He promised her engagement, took out loans in her name, drained her savings, then disappeared." I felt nauseous. "And Sophia?" Evelyn shook her head sadly. "Sophia was last year's target. Same pattern, but he never properly ended things. He's still involved with her. Even engaged." It took me a few seconds for that to sink in. "He's engaged?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Evelyn nodded. "He proposed to Sophia. He told her they're getting married in 6 weeks. My mouth went dry. So he was a married man. My husband, engaged to someone else. All the while, he was defrauding both of us. Then I realized something else. That upstate New York inheritance his parents were so obsessed with, Julian needed to be married to unlock it. That explained his desperation to keep me legally tied, and also why he was looking for my replacement. This wasn't just about siphoning off my money. It was part of a larger, intricate, and dark scheme. I knew I had to talk to Sophia. Evelyn arranged a discreet meeting at a coffee shop the next afternoon. The moment Sophia arrived, I felt a wave of empathy. She radiated happiness, innocent and eager about her upcoming marriage. She had no idea she was engaged to a con artist. I introduced myself, and as soon as I said Julian's name, her eyes sparked with suspicion. "You know him?" she asked wearily. "Because," I said, placing my wedding ring on the table, "he's my husband." Sophia's reaction was visceral. Shock spread across her face. "No way," she whispered, trying to keep her composure. "I'm afraid so." I watched her trembling fingers reach into her purse, pull out her own ring, and place it next to mine. 2 identical rings lying side by side. She began to cry, tears streaming down her face as she recounted her story. Julian had told her about a forthcoming inheritance, but claimed he had to be married to receive it. He promised they'd move to Europe and start a glamorous new chapter. He'd convinced her to hand over her life savings. My hands clenched into fists. "Are you still in contact with him?" I asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. She nodded. "Yes. He's taking me to meet his parents this weekend." I exhaled. "Perfect. Let's crash that little gathering together." Sophia agreed to cooperate. She continued texting Julian, pretending to be oblivious, still enthusiastic about their supposed future. Meanwhile, I dug deeper. A forensic accountant uncovered an offshore account linked to Julian, a secret stash for illicit funds. The debt I'd discovered was just the tip of the iceberg. I also investigated his parents. That upstate New York estate, they didn't have legal rights to it yet. The probate process was complex, messy. They needed a stable heir with a legitimate marriage to gain full control. Julian was that pawn. But now, I had the weapon to dismantle their entire operation. The evening of the grand family dinner arrived quickly. Julian believed he'd introduce his lovely, unsuspecting fiancée to his esteemed parents. Instead, he'd receive the shock of his life. Sophia and I arrived together. I walked in first, seeing Arthur and Eleanor already seated at the lavish dining table, sipping wine as if they were presiding over a royal feast. Eleanor's expression soured the moment she saw me. "What are you doing here?" She bristled. I smiled serenely. "Did you really think I'd miss a family affair?" Just then, Julian entered, hand on Sophia's arm. He froze mid-step, his face paling as he recognized me, and then Sophia standing beside me. I watched the panic flicker in his eyes. "Darling," he said to Sophia, trying to keep his composure. Why is she here?" Sophia crossed her arms. "You tell me." A heavy silence. Eleanor suddenly stood up. "This is preposterous. I will not have this scene at my dinner table." I chuckled. "Oh, I think you should pay very close attention." I glanced at Evelyn, who was waiting at the threshold. "Care to begin?" Evelyn stepped forward, opening a file. "Let's start with the fraud," she announced. "Then we'll talk about the bigamy." The room exploded. Eleanor gasped in horror. Arthur slammed his glass onto the table so hard wine splashed everywhere. Sophia threw her engagement ring at Julian, and Julian just stared, his eyes burning with hatred towards me. He understood that the careful facade had collapsed, the conspiracy exposed, yet an even heavier silence descended, one pregnant with impending doom. Julian stood rooted to the spot, gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles were white. His mother's face contorted with rage and shock, her lips moving as if to scream. His father stared blankly, the consequences of their scheme weighing on him like a stone. "Fraud?" Eleanor hissed, regaining her voice. "Where do you get these ridiculous accusations?" Evelyn calmly placed a thick file on the table. "The evidence is all here. Bank statements, loan applications, forged signatures, and yes, proof Julian took out a business loan in his wife's name without her consent. That alone is a felony." Julian flinched as if struck, but Eleanor pounded the table. "This is a private family matter." "No," I said firmly. It stopped being a family matter the moment you and Julian tried to rob me. Now it's a legal one." Sophia interjected, her voice trembling with rage. "And what about the bigamy, Julian? Because last I checked, I was engaged to a single man, not a married, lying con artist." Julian slowly rose, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor. "Sophia," he began in a soft, coaxing voice. "I can explain." She laughed bitterly. "Please, do." He swallowed, his eyes darting around as if searching for an emergency exit. "Yes, I was involved with you while technically still married," he admitted. "But it's not what you think. My marriage to her was over a long time ago." He gestured towards me without actually looking at me. "We were just working out the final details." I scoffed. "You were done with me? And yet you tried to manipulate me into signing over all my assets? Sounds pretty active to me." Sophia turned to face him, her eyes narrowed. "Everything you said, was it all a lie?" She paused, her voice trembling. "All the plans, the dreams, the wedding, all of it?" For a split second, an unidentifiable emotion flickered across Julian's face. Perhaps regret, perhaps panic. "I meant it," he said. "I wanted that future with you, Sophia." "While you were still married?" She shot back, her voice laced with contempt. He had no answer. Eleanor, seething with anger, shifted her furious gaze to me. "You set this whole ambush up! You're trying to ruin us!" I actually laughed out loud. "Ruin you?" I repeated. "You did that yourselves. I just gathered the evidence." Julian had been silent for too long. Suddenly, he erupted. "You think you've won?" His words were sharp as knives, low and menacing. Everyone turned to look at him. He unleashed his fury on me. "You pretend to be innocent, but you've enjoyed having the upper hand all along. You enjoyed holding the purse strings, making me come begging for money." I raised an eyebrow. Funny description of me protecting my finances from a chronic liar. His face was taut. "You never trusted me." "You never gave me any reason to trust you," I countered. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. "I'm your husband. You should have been on my side, not betraying me like this." Sophia took a step back, trembling from his outburst. Eleanor looked utterly mortified. For the first time that night, Arthur spoke. "Sit down," he snarled, his voice commanding. Julian inhaled, nostrils flaring, but finally lowered himself into his chair. Evelyn cleared her throat, methodically shuffling papers. "Since everyone is agitated," she said, "let me be brief." She held up a single page. "First, Sophia has reported the money you defrauded from her. That's one charge. Fraud." Julian's fists clenched. "Second," Evelyn continued, "the forged signatures for the business loan you took out in your wife's name have also been reported. That's another criminal charge." Eleanor's mouth dropped open. "You involved the police?" I nodded, my eyes never leaving Julian. "Did you really think I'd let you walk away?" His hands trembled. Evelyn pressed on, unaffected. "Third, about that upstate New York estate, the inheritance you're counting on to rescue you. The probate court seems to know more than you think about your family's significant debts." Arthur visibly flinched. "Debts?" With a mysterious half-smile, Evelyn replied, "You weren't aware your assets had been frozen?" A stunned silence fell over the dining table. Eleanor lost the little color left in her cheeks. "No, that's impossible." "I'm afraid it's not," Evelyn said, capping her pen. "The true motive behind coercing my client to merge her assets with yours was to bail you out of significant financial trouble." Eleanor shot up. "Lies!" But her trembling voice betrayed her. She knew it was all true. Arthur and Julian knew it too. Eleanor, now desperate, turned on Julian. "You fool!" she hissed. "All you had to do was secure this deal. Now we're done." He snarled. "Don't put all the blame on me. This was your plan too. You had to execute it," she hissed back. Arthur rubbed his temples, looking like he'd aged a decade in less than an hour. Sophia glared at Julian, shaking. "I want him in handcuffs," she declared. "Don't worry," I told her. "It's happening." Julian's head snapped to me. "You wouldn't!" I met his gaze without flinching. "Watch me!" And that's when the police sirens wailed outside. Julian was arrested that night, charged with fraud, identity theft, and bigamy, more than enough to keep him behind bars. His parents, along with their precious estate, were seized within months. Sophia and I met for drinks the next day, clinking glasses in celebration. Some say revenge is futile, that it solves nothing. But for us, exposing them all was absolutely worth it. Because sometimes, when others try to crush you, the most satisfying victory is ensuring their downfall is even greater. A month later, I stood in the soft morning light of my second store. It was open, thriving, safe. Vance Designs had survived, not because I was lucky, but because I was ready, because I trusted my gut, and because I refused to let betrayal define me. The bank recovered 97% of the money. The rest was covered by fraud insurance. But the money was never the biggest win. It was Sarah. She moved in with me, filed for divorce, and re-enrolled in school. The dark circles under her eyes had started to fade. She laughed again. She baked again. She was healing. She told me something last night as we chopped vegetables, just like we used to with Mom. "You were so brave to protect what you built, Chloe. I want to be brave enough to rebuild myself." And she is. Mark, Julian, pleaded guilty. He'll be in prison for a long time, but his power ended the day Sarah stood up and said, "I'm done being afraid." Last weekend, we went back to the lake house. Not for a reunion, but for a new beginning. The whole family pitched in to paint, repair, and reclaim the space that almost broke us. And we made new rules. Real family protects, not manipulates. Have you ever had to cut a toxic family member out to protect what you love? Do you see yourself in this story? Leave a comment if you've ever said, "Enough is enough." And if you're still gathering courage, borrow a little from me, because blood does not give anyone the right to break you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for unscripted drama to not miss more powerful stories of independence, inner strength, and unexpected justice.